Hello, welcome to ITAM IQ. My name is Keith Rupnick, co-founder and president. Today I'm going to talk to you about our exciting workshop, ITAM and IT Security. This workshop is going to help bridge the gap between the two disciplines to actually embolden an organization's IT security to effectively, efficiently, and most importantly, protect all of the company's data by having an accurate inventory. So let's get started. ITAM for ITech Security. While enterprises cannot control external threats, they can lessen the impact and the vulnerability by identifying the assets. More than 55% of company respondents to a survey recently agreed or strongly agreed that data protection and compliance in the cloud is more difficult than on-premises, and no wonder why. On-premise, you have the simple connection between you and that organization, the data center folks or IT. They're easily accessible. You can pick up a phone, you can go visit the data center. They have skin in the game, if you will, because they're part of the organization. While many digital transformation initiatives have resulted in new sources of revenue and greater profit for enterprises, security collaboration has lagged. This all according to Thales 2023 Global Edition Data Threat Report, Perspectives and Pathways to Digital Sovereignty and Transformation. These are very serious numbers that organizations are facing today. So let's talk about some of the data breaches or security breaches that organizations have actually faced. Ransomware gang steals data of 5.8 million Pharma-America patients. Discord discloses data breach after support agent got hacked. Kingfisher Insurance, 1.4 terabyte of company data, employee emails, and customer data. Those are significant numbers that should cause a chill down anyone's spine that has the liability and the responsibility to protect the organization's crown jewels, their data. So who should attend this workshop? Well, certainly IT asset managers, but also software asset managers, IT directors and managers, IT cloud administrators, and of course, IT security. We need to get those two groups working together closely. So why are we doing this course? Well, there is this huge disconnect, significant disconnect, between the cybersecurity frameworks and ITAM, and that was my primary motivation behind this course. I want to bridge the gap between IT asset management and cybersecurity. I want to help discover the value that an organization can realize by implementing an ITAM program and gain insight into cybersecurity's objectives. There's two different languages going on here. I want you to be able to strengthen your organization's cyber defense by having a very accurate inventory at any time that represents this attack surface cybersecurity is attempting to manage and to protect. Two of the cybersecurity frameworks currently included in this workshop are CIS, or Center for Internet Security, Critical Security Controls. That is a list of the must-do, do-first controls that should be implemented within the organization. And then there's NIST, National Institute of Standard Technology, a federal government agency of the United States. In that, the framework is focusing on using business drivers to guide cybersecurity activities. Both of these frameworks, along with many, many more, address IT asset management. They require it. And many of these two frameworks are mapped to other frameworks. So even if you're not using either of these frameworks, you can find the mappings and translate to what is recommended in this workshop. They are pretty much the same, very similar, different languages, different groupings, but very, very beneficial. ITAM mapping, and this is where a lot of work went into discovering how do I map ITAM's components to these security controls. I defined 37 key components of an ITAM program, and those 37 components mapped to NIST. Now, NIST has 23 functions and 108 categories. The intersections between NIST and ITAM, 328. That's 328 ways ITAM can support IT security initiatives. Now on the other side, CIS has 19 controls and 161 safeguards. So I mapped the 37 key components to CIS, ending up in 428 points of intersection, 428 ways that ITAM supports IT security following the CIS framework. That's over 700 ways ITAM can support both of those frameworks. That's significant, and I can tell you this much, if you pick up either of those frameworks, none of that is in there. It is very, very sparse. Those frameworks say, hey, ITAM, you have to provide an accurate inventory. Well, in order to provide an accurate inventory, it takes a lot of work. Easier said than done, as the expression goes. The course length. It's self-paced, so it's not live online. You can take it at your leisure. There's a 1-hour presentation that takes you through ITAM and then the IT security piece to it and the mapping. There's an exam. It's only about 15 minutes, open book, multiple choice. There's only 18 questions. The purpose of this is just to kind of refresh, confirm you've learned things. Passing score is only a 70%. The real point of this exam is just as a gate to get you to your certificate of participation and to kind of check with you, the student, whether or not you actually understood what was presented in the presentation. The course syllabus starts with the waterfall model is not dead, which is a strange thing for most people to hear because it's gotten bashed many, many times over the last few decades. We're going to talk about what is an ITAM process, just to level set, because remember, we hopefully have not just ITAM people, but IT security people and IT people taking this workshop. Security controls, what are they? And then ITAM, those different key capabilities that I talked about earlier. We're going to talk about the program, the ITAM program, and how it fits into the organization. We'll talk about the ITAM processes, about the ITAM lifecycle, the IT asset lifecycle phases, and those processes and how they play into your security support for the frameworks. And then how do we move your ITAM program forward? How do we get it into IT security's realm? And how do we get IT security into ITAM's realm? And how do we get executive support? And then finally, the mapping of these controls to ITAM. As I said earlier, the waterfall model is not dead, and you'll see in this diagram here how each of these phases actually contributes to trustworthy data. And that's probably the crux of this whole workshop, is to help you understand every single phase of the life cycle of an IT asset has to be managed in order to collect the data necessary to have an accurate inventory. And that's where a lot of the challenges come into play. And a lot of these processes are processes owned by IT. So IT is going about deploying servers and laptops and desktops and tablets. What do they have to capture during that deployment phase in order for the inventory to be accurate? And that's what ITAM actually helps coordinate. And then we'll talk about, as I said, what is an ITAM process? And I just mentioned IT processes. Very few processes are actually owned by ITAM. We're just kind of the people who look at the data being generated from those processes. You might say that in ITAM, we own the integrity of the data. We own the information quality for that IT asset. So for example, accounts payable pays a software vendor's invoice. Why is that of any concern? Well, you need that invoice as a proof of purchase. Furthermore, you need content on that invoice that accurately reflects the software title that you bought as proof of purchase. An employee goes on medical leave and their laptop is powered off and less than a desk drawer. Who cares? Well, it's not going to show up in any discovery reports. It may lead security to say, we lost the laptop, or IT to say, hey, we lost the laptop. Once more, that person comes back from maternity leave and opens it up and jumps on the network. How many patches were applied while they were gone? 0. So there's all sorts of security patches that should be applied before anything else happens with that laptop. So those are just 2 simple examples. What are security controls? I talked about NIST and I talked about CIS. Both of these are known worldwide, and are extremely critical to IT cybersecurity initiatives as having a framework by which they can go and launch and implement their own IT security plans. IT asset lifecycle phases, there are 6 of them. There are processes for each one of them. And in every single part of this presentation, we're going to talk about those processes in those phases. We're going to give examples, just like I did earlier, of how a process benefits some other department, other than IT security. And then we're going to look at, hey, how does that actually benefit IT security? The ITAM program elements that I talked about, data retention, IT standards, discovery and reconciliation processes, tools, repository, discovery, usage, policies and end user roles, on and off boarding, vendor management, and then the phases of the life cycle of the asset. For every single one of those components, there are definition and benefits. I define and present the component definition, and then during that definition, what is the benefit to other departments? And then I look at how does this benefit a security. So once you get through this presentation, you should have a very good understanding of not just the generic overall value of a particular ITAM function, but how it benefits the security group. To move this program forward, we are going to first understand what it is or where we're at in terms of our working relationship between ITAM and IT security, identify what we're currently doing well, meet with IT security and ITAM, review the roadmap our own ITAM program's roadmap based on IT security's needs, then develop a statement for upcoming ITAM projects. What are we going to do that adds value to IT security? And then get IT security support for that program. Now, what's really, I think, cool about the ITAM program, and what is trying to be illustrated here, is not only does it benefit IT security, chances are it benefits other departments. If you implement a capability in ITAM, there are multiple departments that will benefit. It'll be security, yes, but it'll also be IT and IT service desk, compliance. It could benefit the legal department. It could benefit finance or vendor management. This makes investing in ITAM one of the best investments an organization can make because it has so many different returns on investment. Now let's turn to the spreadsheet. We're going to look at the table of contents. There's a spreadsheet that has the mapping and multiple sheets. So in the table of contents, there's the NIST mapping, which maps those ITAM program elements to all of NIST security controls. And we'll see a brief example of that. Then another sheet within there has NIST by control, mapping all of the ITAM components that belong to each control, and then flipping that for each of the ITAM control or ITAM features, you have the NIST controls. Same is done for CIS. You have 3 more sheets with CIS, and then there's a definition sheet, which gives the user of the spreadsheet a really clear understanding of the terms that are being used in the spreadsheet. So let's look at, for example, mapping NIST to ITAM. In this spreadsheet, going across the top of the row are all the ITAM program components, and then down the left side are the NIST controls. And then going across the row or down the column, you see the mapping, the value that ITAM brings to that particular NIST control. Same thing for CIS to ITAM. Now there's CIS controls. There are significantly more CIS controls, thus more intersections between ITAM and CIS. Very similar. But again, you can look at it and evaluate it this way, or you can jump to the sheet, CIS by control. And on that sheet, again, you have all the ITAM components grouped by syscontrol. So for example, syscontrol 1.2, you'd have a list of all the ITAM components that support it. Very easy to use, and also built into it is a method to be able to assess your own implementation, either on the ITAM side or on the security side. So you can look at it and say, well, okay, I haven't implemented this particular ITAM capability yet for this syscontrol. Hey, security, is this of critical value to you? Where would you rank this in your priorities? It's really meant to actually drive conversation between ITAM and security, assess where you're at, and then develop a roadmap of where you need to go. I think it will help certainly enlighten people to this disconnect that occurs, that security and ITAM working in separate silos, bringing together their efforts can really beef up security's understanding of what it is that they actually have to protect. All too often, I have worked with security people who've gone into an organization suffering from an attack, be told that we have 5,000 assets, and only to, through their own discovery, determine that no, you have 12,000 assets. I'm not talking about 1%, 2% errors here. I'm talking 100, 150% miscalculations of the number of assets, or not being able to tell where the assets are, who has them, or what data was on it. This is the ITAM information quality. How do we get information that's the right quality into the hands of the cybersecurity team? Let's take a look now at some of the frequently asked questions. Why is ITAM important to cybersecurity? Well, there's a saying, you can't secure what you don't know you have. And pretty much everyone is familiar with it. It's a good lead-in line. Do we know what we have? Can you quantify it? There are a lot of people out there that are very confident that they have X number of assets, and they think they can quantify it. But here's the scary fact. Just because you can run a tool that runs a report that tells you how many assets you have doesn't mean that that tool is discovering all of the assets. There are several reasons why they're not discovered. The IT asset inventory requires an accurate inventory. Talk to any organization, they have an inventory. Is it accurate? And if they're not managing the life cycle of the asset, they don't have an accurate inventory. It can only be achieved by managing the asset's entire life cycle. There's no other way around it. I am not an IT asset manager. How can this workshop help me? If you're a cybersecurity or IT professional, understanding how ITAM works and operates and what its foundation is and what it can provide is going to only help you accelerate the maturation of your cybersecurity initiatives. It's an excellent addition to any cybersecurity certificate and IT certifications. How can this workshop help me, the IT asset manager? Well, the workshop provides you with a lot of knowledge about these IT security frameworks and the relationship between ITAM and cybersecurity. That means more visibility for you. It gives you the language, the lingo. We talk in ITAM about processes and policies. IT security talks controls. There's different language. You want to be able to go in and talk apples to apples with your IT security teammates, and you want to be able to do it respectively, and you want to be able to listen and learn initially. That's very critical. So an asset manager has to be well-rounded in order to be successful. Well-rounded in legal terms, contracts, for example, in technology, compliance, and IT security. So this is just one other tool in an asset manager's belt. So if I take this workshop, what do I get? Well, you're going to get a very comprehensive textbook that mirrors the presentation. You also get a copy of the presentation. You're going to get this very information-rich spreadsheet that has an assessment for managing your assets, and also for understanding your position within the IT security realm or frameworks that they're working with. and of course, certificate of completion as well. So finally, ITAM and IT security have always had very similar objectives. It's very, very close. We want to know where things are, who's using it, how to get there. Unfortunately, IT security has to spend a significant amount of energy being reactive, monitoring things, looking for things that are out of the norm. Doesn't give them a lot of time to be proactive. Well, ITAM brings the proactive piece to this. IT security program cannot succeed without the function of ITAM. It's just not going to happen. You saw that all those phases, all of the different people within the organization that touch an IT asset, from finance to IT to service desk to the end user to the business unit. All of those different people have their hands in the pot. And our job as asset managers is to make certain we understand what those hands are doing. So we serve multiple interests, and we're going to leverage those interests. ITAM is not just an inventory function, which is what it appears to be in these cybersecurity frameworks. It entails a lot more, and the proof of that is 37 ITAM components, 700 ways ITAM supports both NIST and CIS frameworks. That's significant. Trustworthy inventory data is the need for IT security, and ITAM can provide that. Thanks very much for listening. I really hope you learned a little bit about this workshop. Please feel free to reach out and ask any questions. Contact us at any time. I really, again, thank you for listening, and keep learning.